So I'm on the weekend shift now, and I told myself that I was going to record either Tuesday or Wednesday so I could get this episode up by like Wednesday or Thursday. And it's now Friday, and I have work tomorrow at 7 a.m., and it's currently 12:47 p.m. So, yay, executive dysfunction and procrastination. Except for not really. That was sarcasm. Anyway, welcome to this episode of Divergence and Divine. My name is WIllspiration, and today I think I'm going to shift a little bit away from the neurodivergence aspect, and I kind of want to focus a little more on the, spiritual aspect for this episode. I mean, there's still going to probably be some neurodivergent related things, as, for me, I always kind of relate one to another, but I'm going to kind of put more focus on the spiritual aspect on today's episode, just to kind of, mix it up a little. But first things first is yesterday I had a wonderful experience with a place in town, and it was like all the rooms there are kind of just like very chill, and they're all like Himalayan salt. So like they either have Himalayan salt brick floors, or like the flooring itself is like covered in small chunks of Himalayan salt. And it was a very fun experience from the neurodivergent perspective, because it was like I got to really explore my, sensory, it was just basically sensory heaven, essentially. So I got to explore all of my, sensory related stuff with autism, and I had a lot of fun. And then on the spiritual side of all of that was just like Himalayan salt was like, I know, it was very grounding. It was a very grounding experience. I've read that Himalayan salt has it's in terms of metaphysical properties, has a grounding effect. They also had like Himalayan salt infused water that they would kind of pump into the room, which is pretty cool. I know it's kind of a little weird. Sounds like it would be kind of a concern, but there has been a lot of studies done on it where the right amount of like Himalayan salt in like a humidifier isn't actually like bad for your lungs or anything. It actually is supposed to help like with any sort of breathing issues. It's also a good way to get any excess mucus out. So like from like allergies, or if you're getting over a cold and you still have a little bit of phlegm, like it helps pull that stuff out. If you're getting over a sinus infection, it kind of helps pull some of that mucus out of that are sitting in your sinuses, not so much your sinus cavity, but like in the actual nasal passages out. So that's kind of cool. And it was like a really grounding effect. I felt very calm. I was just kind of playing around with the salt a lot, kind of like sand at the beach, kind of, and then sometimes I would just like straight up lay on the salt, like I was laying on the beach. I know on the Facebook webpage, and even on the webpage for this business, like a lot of people just sit in the chairs that they have there. The kids are the ones that typically more so play with the salt in that room, but I don't know. It was just fun. Like I was like burying my hands in the sand, like in the sand, burying my hands in the salt. It was a lot of fun. Like it was very grounding, and it made me very happy. So I think that's kind of like what I like, is just kind of like, I just felt so calm and so chill that I just kind of like unmasked, and I just was just like me. And like, it's funny because there's like a little tiny window on the door, so that way like when your time is up, they can knock on the door. So like if for whatever reason your back is turned to the door and you turn around, you can actually see them, so they can let you know your time is up. But yeah, I'm like, if anybody saw me, you would think that I was a child, like, because I was just like, it was sensory heaven. Like I was just enjoying myself so much. Anywhere from laying on the salt to rolling around on the salt to like throwing the salt like in the air and stuff. I was just there, and it was a good experience. And then I got like a nice little resin covered black tourmaline pendulum that I am wearing as a necklace, actually. So that's kind of fun. So I had a good day yesterday for sure. But I think going off of that, it was just, it was a great way to kind of cleanse my aura and my energy. So essentially, everybody has an aura. Everybody obviously has energy. But the interesting thing to me is the fact that a lot of people refer to it as they refer to vibrations as vibes. And it's just kind of like, well, you're right on the money, but the way that you're using the term is kind of not all the way there. Because when people use the term vibe, they're like talking about, the mood of the room or like the mood of the person. Like, what was their vibe like? Or like, what's the vibe over there at the party right now? That's kind of, this is like, okay, yes, there is a way to read the room with vibrations, but it's not really the full entire thing, because our energy, everybody produces energy, and energy vibrates, right? So depending on your vibrations depends on a lot of what you have going on. It's the best way that someone described it to me is that there's 4 different bodies. Some people might argue 3, because 2 of these, are typically seen as one and the same, because one is like a subcategory of the other, but we're just going to look at it as 4. So you have your emotional body, you have your mental body, you have your spiritual body, and then you have your physical body. So the stronger and healthier each one is, obviously the better your energy is, the higher your vibration is. The higher your vibration is, the more you attract good things. The idea is, depending on your vibrational frequency determines what you attract in life. So for a lot of people, that's like saying, oh, well, if I'm always negative all the time, then, bad things are going to keep happening to me. And it's just like, that's partially true, but I personally don't think it's entirely true, because there's also times where life will just test you, and kind of see where you're at and see, monitor your growth. And sometimes, it can be a little excessive. Like, I have a friend who's going through a whole lot right now, and has been for like the last, 11 months? 11 months? 10 months? 10 and a half? I'll say 10 and a half months. And it's just kind of like, I feel like sometimes when life tests you that bad, it's kind of, well, it's really annoying and it's really draining. But this person is a really strong person. So I know with me, I tend to worry about, my friends and like people that I care about. But I also know that like, if somebody shows me like that they're okay, even when things get tough, I know I don't have to worry as much. So then it's just kind of like, if they do go silent for like, a week, it's kind of like because they're just so exhausted and so burned out between all of the stuff that they got going on and all the problems that they have going on, that it's just kind of like they just kind of need a break from socializing because they need to take care of themselves, which is something that I actually like, is like when people are like, yeah, I need some time to myself because like I just haven't had time to myself and I need to take care of myself, because that is very important. Taking care of yourself first is a very important thing, because if you don't take care of yourself, then you can't really be there for others. So it's kind of hard to, be someone that listens and attentive when someone's got a problem, or, to be there to help someone out with something when you yourself are not being taken care of, because you're kind of taking care of everyone else, but not yourself. So that kind of brings me into, how you kind of take care of each of these bodies. So I'm not really going to cover too much about the physical body, because obviously we all know how to take care of your physical body: exercise, eating right, the stuff we learn in high school and health class, and things doctors tell us, the doctors tell us. I don't know why I said doctor tells us, like we all have the same doctor. No. But yeah, we all know how to take care of our physical bodies. But one of the things about taking care of your emotional, like your emotional body and your mental body, which again, those are the two that I said, people might argue are one and the same because emotions are kind of a subcategory of mental. But in a way, you can also be able to separate your thoughts from your emotions as well, which is kind of something that you learn in therapy as well, where you kind of learn how to remove the thoughts from the emotions and like acknowledge the thoughts without letting your emotions take over. So there's also that aspect of why it can be seen as separate. The best thing to do for your emotional and mental body is self-care. And, that if that means, letting people know like, hey, I'm not going to be available at all, or because I kind of need some time to myself because I'm just burned out with life right now and I need to kind of take care of myself and kind of recoup. So if I don't respond right away, just know I'm okay. Don't freak out. Like, I'm not mad at you. I'm not, nothing's wrong. I'm not in danger or anything. I'm just, taking a couple days off for myself and, kind of just recuperating and re-energizing because, life has been kind of hectic and stressful lately. I think that that's a really good thing. So I'm kind of glad when someone's just kind of like, yeah, things have just been a lot, like way too much recently. So I'm kind of just, I just needed some, time alone to kind of just recoup and gather my thoughts and, catch up on sleep, etc., etc. So it's like, it's always good to see that people take care of themselves, and it's always good to take care of yourself first because, obviously, like I said before, it's kind of hard to be there for other people when you don't have the energy to be there for other people because you barely take care of yourself as it is. And then taking care of the spiritual body is kind of up to interpretation. Some people obviously don't believe in like the metaphysical aspect. If you're a traditional like Christian or Catholic, or if you know somebody that is, they'll think of metaphysical as occultish practices or even demonic practice. But really, it's just kind of, it's a way to kind of keep your faith strong. Me personally, I think that there's ties to metaphysical and religion. And I feel like for me, that's kind of, as somebody who grew up Lutheran, I feel like there's more to it because it just kind of seems like everything is always like, everything falls on God. And it's just kind of like people are like, yeah, I'm just going to, sit back and just let God do everything. And I'm just going to go with whatever he plans. And people are always like, well, how are you so blessed? And it's just like, oh, well, I thank God every day. But in actuality, from the metaphysical standpoint, you're basically operating in a higher frequency because your spiritual body is so strong because of your faith that you're just kind of letting the universe do whatever it needs to do, or in this case, letting God do whatever, he needs to do in order to ensure that you have a good, healthy life. So in terms of like, your faith and your spirituality, that's kind of one way is like, having faith in whatever, you believe in, whether it's like, spiritualism and that, the universe is just kind of its own thing and we're here, or you believe in God, or that we have some sort of creator that made all life and the universe. Or if you're like me and you have that thought of, well, if, what people say about God existing outside of the universe is real, then then technically wouldn't that make God the whole universe? Like, God is the universe and the universe is God in a way. So when you pray, you're actually manifesting, and the stronger your faith, the stronger your spiritual body. So you kind of attract what you put out. I mean, that's the way I see it. I mean, everybody sees things differently, but that's personally how I see it. So just kind of having any sort of faith, really. And then again, like, everybody has some sort of mental health problem. I truly believe that. I kind of find it hard to believe in this day and age that somebody doesn't have some sort of mental health issue, because I'm just going to put this out here. But yes, anxiety can be a mental health issue, like disorder, because there is general anxiety disorder, and there are panic attacks, and there are things related to anxiety. So even just having really bad anxiety in general is, in a way, kind of like generalized anxiety disorder, especially if it happens more and more frequently too. So everyone's got some sort of mental health issue, I believe, but that's just me. And part of that is obviously, doing whatever you need to in order to take care of that, be it going on medication or like kind of challenging those thoughts in therapy and kind of learning how to find ways to cope without medication. Because sometimes some people can benefit from just therapy alone. Sometimes people can just benefit from the medication alone. But most times you kind of need both. You kind of need the medication to kind of get you more to that level of where you'd be able to actually work through it in therapy and kind of understand it more. And then obviously then the therapy is to help challenge whatever the medication doesn't help cover. But there are also some people that just don't really benefit from like medication at all. So it's just kind of like doing your best to use therapy as a coping tool, then learning other coping mechanisms that are healthy in therapy. So that's why I always say therapy is important, and that medication is pretty much up to your discretion. And, if you feel comfortable taking it and if you think it'll help. But the one thing that I will say about that is that just be forewarned that you might have to go through several medications before you find the right one for you. So do be aware that some of those can, have side effects like irritability, mood swings, increased anger, suicidal thoughts, etc., etc. So just kind of be aware of that. Otherwise, really in therapy, you kind of learn how to separate the emotional aspects from the thoughts, so that you kind of learn how to just acknowledge the emotions that those thoughts bring, and then be able to just kind of let the thought pass. And then when the thought passes, your emotions kind of calm down afterwards. It is a very hard thing to do. I've been in therapy since I was 25 and I'm 32, and I'm now just getting the hang of it, because I feel like as a neurodivergent person, I think it's a little bit harder to learn how to separate your thoughts from your emotions, so that way it doesn't control you. Because while I don't have OCD, because I did do an OCD test and I did not meet the criteria for OCD, but the autism does cause repetitive behaviors, and sometimes that includes repetitive thoughts. So it's basically like having built-in OCD without actually having OCD. But it just kind of helps take the emotional aspect out of that thought, and then being like, okay, this thought is just my fear. I know that I'm safe. I know that I'm okay. I know that I'm afraid of whatever this thought is, whatever I'm thinking about, and this thought is going to happen, but, there's no proof that it's going to happen. So I'm just going to take a deep breath, and I'm just going to kind of acknowledge my fear, acknowledge my thought, tell myself, tell my brain that it's okay, nothing bad is happening, and kind of accept that, every day is an unknown, and, you never know when something's going to happen. Because I feel ultimately one of the biggest things, at least for autistic people, is like not having a routine and not having a plan is, for some people, on the spectrum, that doesn't really affect them. For other people, not having that consistent routine and knowing what's going to happen next will just like pretty much throw you off completely. But I feel like when it comes to not knowing the future, you you get kind of scared because you don't know when you're going to wake up and something bad happens, or like you're going to get into a car accident. Like you never know. So it's always kind of like, it makes the world a scary place when you don't know exactly what's going to happen. So for me, that's like been the biggest thing in therapy, is like having to accept the fact that I don't know when anything's going to happen, and to not live in fear of these things happening, because I don't know if they're going to happen. They may never happen, but at the end of the day, I can't live in my fear, because then how am I supposed to operate in life if I can't even, if I'm operating in fear? Which, going back to the spiritual aspect, fear is a very low vibration, and we all know that that's considered a negative emotion, right? So if you're constantly in a state of fear or stress or anxiety and your vibrations are lower, you're just going to attract negative things, which kind of, essentially is like bad luck. You're basically a bad luck magnet, to put it in layman's terms. So you want to kind of raise your vibrations and kind of just change the way that you think, and then kind of start raising your vibrations out of that more negative vibration into at least a more, I'd say, neutral vibration, where it's kind of like, you can do better. But it's easier to just kind of stay in that neutral and try to work up than to kind of just stay in the negative, because then you kind of like, you might have a little string of bad luck here or there, or a string of good luck here and there, but at least it's not all the time. And for me, I've noticed that, as I've gone through this, metaphysical and spiritual journey since 2019, I operate more on the higher end of the neutral spectrum, kind of getting more into that like positive area of that like scale of the, of vibrations. So like for me, things are kind of like happening more, like things are happening better. Like, if something happens, it's usually there's it almost feels like there's some sort of like trade-off. Like, for example, things have been going downhill on second shift at my work since the beginning of October. And for me, it was not good for my mental and emotional body. And I put in for a transfer, and literally my transfer got turned in a week later. And then the following week, they gave me a start date that was basically 2 weeks from then. And that's how I ended up on the weekend shift. And last weekend was my first week there, and it was only for 1 day, because Saturday they had off for Thanksgiving. And then, of course, like I said earlier at the beginning of the episode, Monday was given to us off for Black Friday. But it was just kind of like, things were kind of going downhill there. But hey, my transfer got approved, and I got a start date for the weekend shift super quick. And I only had to wait 4 weeks, because I put in for my transfer, and then it took a week for my shift manager and my supervisor to sign the paper and turn it in. And then from there, they just immediately gave me a start date. And it's just like, wow, that's actually pretty cool. And it also comes with a pay increase, because the shift differential is 22% of my base pay. So I have gone from making $17.32 to $19.32. So it was basically a $2 increase. And that's just kind of like rounding it like to a neutral number, because it was a little more than that. It was a few cents more than just like a $2 increase, but I just rounded it down to $2 just to make it a little more simpler. So I'm basically making $19.32 an hour, and it's, and there's a trade-off, because it's 12 hours, but it's only for 3 days and then I get 4 days off. And I feel like operating on that higher end of the neutral vibration zone, bordering the positive vibration zone, kind of really helped a lot with that, because now I'm kind of getting closer to being in that higher vibration, in that state of just kind of accepting what is and kind of not forcing it, and just kind of going with what life has planned. Like, not living in that fear that my OCD thoughts, give me, and just kind of letting things be. And as a result, there's more abundance, like a pay increase, and, the people are a little more chill on the weekends, and the management is pretty good. And, I get to work under my former team lead that left us at the beginning of September. He's now my supervisor. So, it kind of works out, because like, I got someone in management that sees my potential and wants to see me grow and wants to help me grow. Whereas like on second shift, it's become more about favoritism instead of, seeing the potential in everybody. And I feel like that's kind of what makes a good leadership and a good person, is kind of being able to recognize everyone's strengths and weaknesses, but also kind of realizing that no one has to be the star. No one has to be the perfect employee or the perfect person to be able to do something. Like, any contribution is a good contribution, so long as you're not, being lazy and then the laziness is just in terms of like in terms of work. But at work, you don't have to aim to be the best. You just gotta, work with what you got, and you acknowledge your weaknesses, and you use your strengths to your advantage, and you just contribute what you can instead of stressing yourself out. And that's another great way to kind of help with, keeping your emotional and mental body in check, is not like letting your thoughts be like, oh my gosh, I need to work harder, I'm a terrible employee because I'm not working hard enough. Whereas like, you acknowledge that, that you're putting in all of your effort, and that, you're not a weak link, but you also know that, I may not be able to contribute as much as somebody else, but like, my contribution still matters because I'm giving it my all. So to me, I feel like that's kind of an important thing about like, not just someone that would make a good leader, but like as someone that's a good person in general, is like, understanding that everyone's strengths matter in some capacity, and that everyone has a place somewhere. Because my first supervisor that I ever had, he was so cool. He, and this was before I even knew that I had autism or ADHD. And I remember feeling like, when the lead custodians at the school district were like kind of coming down on me because I wasn't able to keep up, it made me feel bad. Because now it's just like, well, why am I so slow? Why am I, not able to keep up with everyone else? And it's kind of like, well, now I know that I'm on the spectrum. And I know that like, not only did the ADHD kind of make it harder, but then the autism kind of made it hard as well, because it's just like, I want to get everything done, but then, I also know that I can't rush, but then I also know that I need to make sure everything gets done properly, but I also know that I can't waste time doing everything properly the way it should, because then I don't have time to get the whole job done. But I don't want to just half-ass everything. Like, I have to try to do everything to my best ability, and it just stressed me out that it was just making me clean slower, because I'm trying to find that right, that right sweet spot of, I did everything. It's not half-assed, but it's not perfect because I don't have time to make it perfect, but it's enough to be presentable for the next day, right? Whereas like, people would be like, well, you're just not moving fast enough. We need you to move faster. And then I remember going to my supervisor and telling him that I don't know. I just don't know what to do. Like, I'm concerned because I don't want to lose my job. I'm doing my best. I'm giving it like 120%. And, they said, the lead custodian said they were going to, tell you that I was doing a bad job. And I remember he just told me that he calmed me down. He knew that I was a hard worker, and he was like not worried about it, because he said that when he's seen my work compared to the other guy's work, that it was a lot better. And sure, it wasn't perfect, but at least it wasn't half-assed either. And he told me, he's like, hey, there's a building here for every custodian. He's like, so maybe this building that you're at right now isn't working out. So, we can put you in another building that has a slightly smaller area for you to clean. And, we can give that a go. But I guarantee you there's somewhere for everybody. So don't feel like you're doing a terrible job, because I know you're a hard worker, because I've seen your work and it's amazing. And that kind of really made me feel good, because it's just kind of like, when I look back on it now, I'm like, just because I struggle to want to do my job perfectly doesn't mean that I, even if I can't do it perfect, as long as I do it to the best of my ability, it doesn't matter, because doing it to the best of my ability will always be better than just rushing through and half-assing everything. It'll always be the way I see it is like it'll always be 75, like somewhere between 70 to 85%. So it's still, it's still passing. It's still, it's still passable. It's good, And who knows? Maybe at some point I'll be able to get closer to that, keeping it at a constant 80 to 90, like, most neurotypicals do, but like in my own way. But still, even just being closer to that range of where neurotypicals operate is like still pretty good. Those are some pretty good odds considering. So I think that like when we neurodivergent people stop comparing ourselves to others, especially when we stop comparing ourselves to neurotypicals, that we tend to succeed far more, because we know that we can't compare ourselves to them because our brains are wired differently. So we just kind of do our own thing, and it's just easier to operate on something that works for us that still gives us the same result. Because as long as your workplace is flexible with how you get your work done, as long as the result is the same, then really that opens up a lot of possibility for you to be able to do the things that, like your job and everything, in a way where you can use your neurodivergence to your advantage and be able to get things done. And, it works a lot better. But not every workplace is like that, though. So you just kind of, I think the biggest thing is just kind of feel out where you're working. And if you feel like you can't really operate in your neurodivergence and use your own thought process that makes more sense, that working for that place probably isn't for you. Like there's somewhere out there for you, and I feel like my job as a packer at a pharmaceutical packaging company is a pretty easy task, because everything's, it's all simple tasks, it's just a matter of, movement speed. And even then, most of the times you're at the mercy of the machines, because it's really depends on how fast the machine runs. So it's not super hard, but, it's also, kind of boring. But if I can do the best that I can, then hey, you know what? That's great. Like I'm proud of myself. And again, then feeling good about yourself kind of puts you in that higher vibration, because you're just like, especially when someone else tells you that you did a good job, because like you're always so hard on yourself as a neurodivergent person, comparing yourself to everyone else, that when you get praise from somebody, you're just like, wow, like really? Like, are you sure? Like, I mean, I feel like I could have done better, but like, thank you, I guess. Because it's just kind of like, you're just like, I still could have did so much better, but this person's telling me that I did amazing and I don't feel like it. But I'm going to take the compliment anyway, because like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am actually kind of selling myself short after all. And then you just kind of roll with it, and you just kind of realize, hey, once I stop comparing myself to other people and just do what I do best by being my neurodivergent self, everything is great. Like, I don't feel stressed anymore. Like, I can actually be myself. And that's kind of like the biggest thing is like, when we get so lost in our mind and when we compare ourselves to others, that we're like, we just limit ourselves and we put ourselves in that lower vibration too, that we just kind of are like, and then we attract what frequency we're at. And it just kind of, it kind of sucks. Whereas like if you're on, on a higher vibration, things kind of go better. And that was kind of one of my assignments that I had for my coaching, was kind of just remembering the feelings that I got in that like little salt room that I was in yesterday that I mentioned earlier in this episode, and the joy and like all the tingles and the warm fuzzy feelings and the calmness and the just kind of the feeling of unmasking and being myself and being in that high vibration, is just remembering that vibration and kind of like learning how to stay in that vibration and stay in that higher frequency. And it's just like, it was a really good assignment, and I liked it. And that's kind of what I liked about my coaching that I've done so far, like with my Reiki teacher, is just that, everything has a positive benefit to it, and it just kind of has helped keep me out of that lower end of the neutral vibration like section of the scale, and kind of bringing me closer and closer to that higher vibration section of that scale. And it's just kind of like, it's so different because like, it's like people can sense that. People can sense your energy and your vibrations, and you can just kind of, feel out when somebody's energy isn't right. It's just kind of like, the thing is that really you have to separate your thoughts of that person, like what you're getting visually, and kind of just start feeling out their energy. Because I've been judged so many times because of just the look on my face. It's always very kind of like, it's just kind of, I would describe my face as kind of bored, emotionless, basically like burned out. I look like I'm burned out like 24/7, because that's just how my face is. My resting face just looks like I'm burned out. I don't care. And a lot of people have judged me for the look on my face, as opposed to like feeling out my energy. Whereas like, once people get to know me, they're like, wow, I thought you were kind of, I thought you were going to be a jerk, or I thought you were going to be like weird or creepy, but you're actually pretty, pretty chill. And then there are just people that like, they just judge off of looks alone. And typically those people are either in a lower vibration or in the lower half of the neutral vibration section of the scale. So they're not thinking of the person as a whole. They're not like feeling out their energy. They're just thinking, oh, that person's, the way they dress, the way they stand, the look on their face, they're weird. I don't like them. But that's where the saying, never judge a book by its cover, comes in, because you could be wrong about that person completely, because that person could just be having a bad day, or they could be burned out. And, and the way they dress is probably how they feel comfortable. So you can't really knock someone for not dressing to a societal standard when they don't like that look. I mean, that's part of authenticity, and, being an individual is dressing however you want. If dressing like how you did in high school, makes you feel comfortable, then dress like that, Dress in like, somewhat loose jeans and a baggy t-shirt, or, in skinny jeans and, a tight t-shirt, or, or wear sweats and in a hoodie, or however you dress. Like, if that's how you feel comfortable, that should be okay. And if society says, oh, well, you don't want to date someone like that because obviously, they don't care about their appearance. It's just like, I do care about my appearance, but I also don't want to dress and feel uncomfortable. And if I feel comfortable this way, then it should be accepted. So I always say, just be yourself, be your true, authentic, genuine self. Because once you're more genuine and authentic, all the time, and you start to, accept yourself and love yourself more by being yourself, not just, instead of just, being yourself at home, like you're yourself around, other people in public, then you kind of like, people kind of go, wow, I kind of like this person's energy. Like they're pretty cool. And then you'll be shocked to realize like how many neurotypical friends and, you might make with that. But again, there's always that caveat of being aware, trying to do your best to be aware of people that are just going to use you for your positive vibrations, to take advantage of you. So always make sure that you have boundaries up, where it's like, if people are like, oh, can you do this for me? It's okay to do a favor for someone every once in a while. But like if somebody starts asking you for favors more often, then you kind of know that they're just taking advantage of you, because they're like, oh, this person's energy is really good. And they're very helpful. I bet you I can get as much help out of them as I can. So, feel free to help someone here and there, but don't feel like you got to help them out all the time. Like for me, if someone asks for help, I'll help them. But if I notice it's becoming a very common thing, I'll be like, yeah, no. Like, I'm going to have to pass on this one. And then I'll make up some excuse like, oh, I'm busy that week, or, oh, I don't have enough money, or I'll make up some sort of excuse to get out of it, Or even if I straight up just don't have the energy and I'm burned out, sometimes I'll just admit that I'm burned out. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, I got something going on this week. And it's just like, well, I'm just burned out. I don't want to really help. But I think that is going to do it for this week's episode. I will try to have the next episode up by Wednesday or Thursday for sure. I am literally going to put an alarm in my phone after this, so you guys can expect the next episode. Like, I'm going to say expect it on Wednesday, but I would say expect it on Thursday just to be safe. But again, if you guys haven't already, like the video, subscribe if you like this podcast. If you hit the bell, then you will be notified when I upload videos. So if I do end up uploading it on Wednesday, even though I'm telling you guys to expect it Thursday, then you guys will be aware ahead of time. But yeah, I really enjoy doing this, and it really makes my day when I get to do this podcast. So I'm going to go and I'm going to edit the audio a little bit, make it sound a lot better, because trust me, when I record this, it doesn't sound that great. So I'm going to fix that up, and then I'm going to upload this. So I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.